Greetings, borderline lovers and YouTube lovers alike. It's time for a video. I'm going to try and do a couple. First one's on a video that I recently saw. It's called Going Mental. I think that's the channel name, but Going Mental, the Big Five Fears and How to Use Them Against Someone with Borderline Personality Disorder. And maybe a better title would be The Big Five Fears and How to Use Them Against Somebody with Borderline Personality Disorder. And then in parentheses put, and the possible consequences. And basically what this channel, or what this video was all about is, actually what the channel was about, it was basically a borderline personality disorder hate channel. More specifically, it was about supposedly mentally healthy men, and I'm sure some of them were, but I'm also certain some of them weren't, in relationships with women who had borderline personality disorder or had traits of borderline personality disorder, and the relationship gets fucked up, and you just get a bunch of pissed off men, so it ends up being basically a channel about bitching. And when I do my videos, I guess the reason I'm doing this is when they gave some really horrible analogies, and if you're going to do a video on borderline personality disorder, keep the topic on borderline personality disorder. Don't start mixing in other disorders like histrionic and narcissism and antisocial. If your topic's on borderline personality disorder, that's where you keep the focus. But when it comes to men dating a woman that has borderline personality disorder, some men are actually mentally healthy and they get in a relationship with a woman with borderline personality disorder, and I have zero doubts that they go through a rough time. But there's also men that are not mentally healthy, that see a woman in distress and leech onto them, basically in a way manipulate them. We call them knights in shining armor. They're coming in to rescue the woman and save the day, and then when the woman with borderline personality disorder eventually rejects them, they get all distraught and rejected, etc. Basically, the channel is just a channel for men to bitch. So anyways, when I do my videos on borderline personality disorder, I try to keep it specifically focused on that. I don't like to delve off into histrionic and narcissistic and antisocial, simply because I don't know that much about them. My knowledge is very remedial. I did do one on schizoid. And even when I do the ones on borderline personality disorder, I keep them specific, as close as I can, specific to myself and those that are like me, because there are people with borderline personality disorder that won't react to situations the same way I do, and others that are like me. And a good example would be if you take mentally healthy individuals and you put them in a situation, not every mentally healthy individual is going to react in the same way. And it's like that with borderline personality disorder. We're people, and the things that trigger me may not trigger somebody else. And a good example of that is with some people, the borderline personality traits manifest in situations that only involve romantic relationships. With me, it manifests in friendships as well as romantic relationships. So anyways, basically Their video was, I guess basically how to piss off somebody with borderline personality disorder and use those techniques of pissing them off to get them out of your life, which makes absolutely no sense to me. And so they gave some really bad analogies. And the first one, it's not even comparing apples to oranges. It's, comparing apples to cauliflower. First one, the guy, this Paul Elam, he's, rambling on. He's talking about how they're doing this video, and he says, without a doubt, there will be borderlines that will be sending him comments, all pissed off and angry and raging and all this type of stuff. And, but it's just these borderlines that would do that. If he was to do a video on pedophilia, he wouldn't be getting a bunch of raging, angry pedophiles sending him emails and leaving comments. So that's kind of a ridiculous statement for somebody to be making. One, not all borderlines will react in a rageful manner, but more importantly, having borderline personality disorder or mental illness isn't against the law. Pedophilia is against the law. So if they're doing a video on borderline personality disorder, since it's not against the law and it pisses somebody off, and that person with borderline personality disorder wants to leave hateful comments or mean comments or nasty comments, there's nothing wrong with that because it's not against the law. Pedophilia, on the other hand, is against the law. So common sense, since it's against the law, a pedophile isn't going to leave mean, hateful, nasty comments. So that was the first ridiculous analogy made. The second one was kind of relating us to like drug addicts. Well, again, talking about, it's not apples to oranges, it's like apples to cauliflower. Because I didn't choose to be borderline, and neither did anyone else. I was never given the option to be, do I want to choose to be borderline or narcissistic or antisocial? I wasn't given that choice. Neither was anyone else with borderline personality disorder. A drug addict, on the other hand, at some point in their life, made a choice to try a drug. I always like to say cocaine, because it's a fun word. But anyways, they made a choice to try a drug, they got addicted to it, and that's how they became a drug addict. So they made a choice, whereas somebody with borderline personality disorder did not make a choice. I think a better analogy would be, that would be more apples to apples, would be if a woman was raped. There are some women that can push beyond that and go on to lead productive lives and have productive relationships, productive careers. I'm not saying they forget what happened to them. And there are some women that can't get beyond that, and it destroys their life. They can't have healthy relationships, and they just have a fucked up life. And I'm not saying that to be mean. A woman does not choose to be raped. Same thing with borderline personality disorder. I did not choose this. And I wrote a poem on this. It's called Water and Ice Cubes, and I'm going to put the link in the description. If people want to read it, they can. But basically, when I look back at my childhood, there were situations, and I had this discussion with my therapist Monday of last week, where in my life, I can go back to my childhood. And, around 6th, 7th grade, I can remember being in the middle of my parents' divorce, dealing with things that no child in the 6th or 7th grade should have to deal with, and most kids in healthy families would be protected from. I didn't have the skills or the maturity to be in those situations, but it was forced upon me. And, it had its effects. And, so, I'm just trying to, I'm losing my concentration. Basically, my fucked up childhood wasn't a choice of mine. When I'm 12, 13 years old, I'm not in a position to where I could say, fuck this relation, this family dynamic is really messed up. I'm getting the fuck out of here, and I'm moving out and getting my own place and getting a job. 12, 13-year-old kid, they're in that position. They don't have a choice to get out of it. When I bring this up, I'm not saying, so I guess that would be my analogy. I think that's more, I'm not saying borderline is worse than rape or rape is worse than borderline. They're both bad. It's basically a analogy that I think is more accurate than the one they gave. So I got through that hurdle. So let's get on with the rest of the video. And I will say there are certain aspects of their video that that I like, and there's a lot of it that I could relate to. The problems that I have is the way in which, if you really want to cut off ties with somebody that has borderline personality disorder, I think their ways of going about it are, I don't know, completely wrong and potentially dangerous, maybe. But, they did bring up one thing. And it was empathy. And I've questioned this, and I've actually thought about doing a video on this, and it was, I think they refer to it as cold empathy, but I've often wondered how sincere our empathy is. I'm not very empathetic at all. But there's some people with borderline personality disorder that seem to be overboard with the empathy, and I sometimes wonder, and I have no doubt some of it's real, but I sometimes wonder, how much of it is real and how much of it may be used for manipulation. First of all, anybody with a personality disorder manipulates. But with the different disorders, I think the motivations behind the manipulation are important and relevant. I think people with borderline personality disorder manipulate because they don't have the ability to ask for the things that they need. And so, for example, this is just a very simplistic example. If they made a big deal out of your birthday, and you didn't make a big deal out of their birthday when their birthday comes up, you're probably going to be pushed away or split black. And I'm not sure if I'm making any sense with this, but so basically, when it comes to doing things for somebody, I always like to ask myself if I do something for somebody, Am I doing it because I really want to do it and I have no expectations in return? Or am I doing it because I expect that person to do the same thing for me in return? So I do a nice gesture for you. I want to be nice, but I'm also doing it because I want you to show me that same love or like. That's the manipulation. So if I can do something and expect nothing in return, I'll do it. And if I think that I'll be upset if I don't get what it is I need back in return, then I don't do it. And I don't think in a lot of instances or with borderlines that manipulation is done to be hurtful. It's done because they don't know how to ask for the things it is they need to hear, or they may not feel like they're worth it, I guess. So anyways, I could relate to some of the things the video is going on and some of the descriptions they were giving. But basically, if you want to end a relationship with a person with borderline personality disorder, the first thing, go no contact. And what that means is, it really means go no contact. If they're on your Facebook page, you delete them, you block them. If they're on your Twitter, you get rid of them. You block their phone number, you block their text messaging. You don't respond to them at all. You just cease contact. And, and if they email you, the only time you reply to that email is if you absolutely have to. Otherwise, you just delete it. Even if they're yelling and arguing, let it go, move on, don't respond. If they continue the behavior, you go to the police, you get a restraining order. And really what their video was talking about, you start keeping track of all this stuff, and eventually you use all this stuff against the person and make it all public, basically embarrassing them and pissing them off. But, if you start keeping track of everything people do with the sole purpose of basically outing them at some point, that's going to piss anybody off, whether they have borderline personality disorder or not. It's not a smart thing to do. So basically, if after you blocked them and stopped responding to them, they can't get the hint, you get a restraining order. If they violate that, take them back to court. You got a paper trail going, you're establishing your boundaries. Think about the only area that I agreed with this person is, again, we're talking about manipulation here, and it talks about, what they were talking about, and I do agree with them on this. This is probably like maybe the one thing that I did agree with them on, and that is that, when you're trying to break off a relationship with somebody with borderline personality disorder, we do manipulate. So a lot of times it will bring into, if you don't talk to me, I'm going to commit suicide, or I'm going to do something dangerous, I'm going to kill myself or something like that. And this is the one area where I agreed with them. If somebody says that, what do? You call 911. It's that simple. You don't try to solve their problems. You don't talk with them. You're not a doctor. You're not a therapist. You're not a psychiatrist. You're not a psychologist. You call 911 and let them deal with it. Let them make the call. And that also goes to setting a boundary. Because it shows the person that if you put me in this situation, this is what's going to happen. So I don't think their video was a mentally healthy way of going about ending a relationship with someone that has borderline personality disorder. It was more of a vindictive way, and I don't know, maybe a childish way. And then I tried to watch another video just because it was on borderline personality disorder, and I found both of them so annoying I couldn't watch it. Another one thing, they were talking about the percentages of how many people are there out there with borderline personality disorder. And the doctor said, 3 to 5%, but that's understated. So it's probably closer to 20%. But again, this is about borderline personality disorder, their video. She goes, it's probably closer to 20%. But I'm also including people with antisocial personality disorder and histrionic personality disorder, and people with narcissistic personality disorder, and people that exhibit traits of borderline personality disorder, or just difficult people in general. Well, that's not accurate. I will agree with her. The percentage of people, or percentage of the population with borderline personality disorder is understated. It's probably about 3 to 4% of the population. It is a little bit higher than that because a lot of men go undiagnosed with borderline personality disorder. But if we're staying strictly focused on diagnosed people with borderline personality disorder, and we're including men and women, it would certainly be under 10%. So my videos are better than theirs because I do a video on borderline personality disorder, and I keep the topic on borderline personality disorder. They're all over the fucking place. So anyways, I know this video has been long. If you managed to make it all the way through, God bless you. If you want to go watch their video, feel free to do it. Otherwise, share, like, comment, do whatever you want. Anyways, thanks. Bye.